White South Africans arriving as refugees at Dulles Airport outside Washington today on a plane chartered by the State Department, a process that usually takes years, greeted by a top-ranking U.S. diplomat.
Welcome. Welcome to the United States of America.
And this from President Trump.
It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And
just for the record, there is no genocide being carried out in South Africa. Of course, there's farmers, white farmers, and predominantly white farmers, and black South Africans conflict, and many of them, the white farmers get unalive, but there's no widespread genocide being carried out, which is kind of ironic because there's a real genocide being carried out in Palestine. But nobody seems to want to talk about it. The media doesn't want to talk about it. Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about it. Elon Musk doesn't want to talk about it. But this fake genocide is what they want to talk about because they are trying to promote a specific policy or a specific agenda. And that agenda is to force the Ramaphosa, which is the South African government, South African president, his government is the ANC government. They are trying to force him to repeal a law that was supposed to expropriate land from the predominantly white farmers that owns 80% of South Africa's land, but they're only 7% of the population. So this is the elites, the white elites in South Africa, trying to force America into South Africa's internal politics. And they're just like Israel uses the United States, South Africa is trying to use the United States with the help of Elon Musk. Let's continue.
Farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me.
The president signed an executive.
Of course, whether they're white or black, there is a lot of other races that genocide is currently, as we speak, being carried out, and the United States could care less. The reason why they care about this one is because of Elon Musk. And just follow the money, and it will explain everything.
Order in February calling them victims of unjust racial discrimination from the country's black majority, something the South African government vigorously denies. While today the administration also canceled temporary refugee status for as many as 14,000 Afghans already in the U.S., including many who served alongside the U.S. in the war. All face persecution from the Taliban if they are forced to go back. Veterans groups reacting. How do American veterans of the war in Afghanistan feel?
Just to give you guys some details. So there's a lot of, now the Taliban is in charge in Afghanistan, there's a lot of Afghans that worked for the United States government and for the military that were denied refugee status, and a lot of them has been killed. What message does this send to people that work with the United States? They will be abandoned because despite your contribution, if you're not among the right demographic, or if you don't have wealth, they're just going to use you and abandon you, which is what Donald Trump and Elon Musk is doing right now. So let's continue.
About the way their Afghan interpreters and allies are being treated.
We're pissed off. This is absolutely insane that we would treat people this way.
The welcome for white South Africans also in sharp contrast to another executive order the president signed the day he took office, suspending new refugee admissions for everyone else, including Black Sudanese escaping genocide and Latin Americans fleeing violent gangs. Some tonight question whether Elon Musk played a role in winning refugee status for his fellow white South Africans, because he has repeatedly posted on his platform X about their plight. Lester?
Thanks, Joe.
Of course, Elon Musk is the one that's promoting this because his family is they're very wealthy South Africans as well, and they're among the beneficiaries. And I'm going to play a video of one of the primary beneficiaries of the South African apartheid system. His name is Rob Herzog. He is an activist, and basically what he does is to speak against the Ramaphosa government, the ANC government, which, to his credit, he's correct because the Ramaphosa government, the ANC, they're very corrupt. When the apartheid ended in 1994 and the power was handed off to the ANC, they severely mismanaged South African government. They conducted a lot of nepotism, which is not common in Africa. Africa is known to have terrible leaders, and they can't run countries. They can't run their countries. So, despite the fact that there was apartheid in South Africa, the white government were able to develop South Africa to the most successful country in Africa. Although South Africa wasn't the most mineral rich in Africa, it is one of it, but it's not the most. The white government in South Africa, the apartheid government, were able to manage the resources in such a way that when they handed off power to the black majority, South Africa was such a good position in Africa and the rest of the world. And since then, the ANC government has ride it to the ground. So we're going to listen to Rob Herzog. Rob Herzog, he is speaking from the point of view of the minority white African, the elite white African. So this is one of the people that has been in the forefront of being the activist to prevent the ANC government from expropriating their land and their resources, and distributing it to the the black majority and the poor black. So let's go ahead and listen to this.
South Africa, one of the beautiful things of coming to this conference is you meet people from all over the world. Everyone is going through their own experience, kind of personally and politically in their own countries. South Africa suddenly has gotten on the American map a little bit in the last week or so. But before we get to that, maybe if you could just give me a kind of 1-minute bio on who you are, how you sort of got into public life, and then we can hit the issues.
Sure. I'm 64 years old. I'm fifth generation South African. And I was born into real wealth in South Africa. My grandfather founded a big mining industrial business, and I spent my education in South Africa. I did university there, and I spent 2 years as an infantry officer in the South African Defence Force in the old days.
So he spent 2 years in the infantry in South Africa apartheid regime. So what he's basically telling you is, in another way, is he was basically the Ku Klux Klan of the apartheid regime. So it's mandatory for the white minority to serve in the apartheid government for about 2 years. So basically learning things from the white perspective and serving in the apartheid government. So his point of view is from the white perspective. So just make note of that as you listen to this.
Then I went to America, Goldman Sachs, Harvard Business School, and then I worked as Rupert Murdoch's right-hand man for 3 years in New York. I then went to Europe, more corporate life, founded Marquis Jet Europe, sold it to NetJets, and did various entrepreneurial things, and failure, success. And in 2017, after 31 years overseas, I went back to South Africa. And in addition to business, I became an accidental activist, a capitalist activist. I made a speech 3.5 years ago that went viral, calling out the government. And once I survived "You're a racist" card, because a lot of political people said, you may not like him, but he's not a racist. I have kept going, and I've become probably the only business person standing up and speaking out against the ANC government.
So talk to me about the ANC government and what has kind of put this now on the map from an American perspective, where South Africa is just not on the long list of countries that we talk about that often.
Well, I'm glad America's noticed. I really am, because we're on the edge of going into the abyss. The ANC, the Liberation ANC, in 1994, took control of the country. And they've been running the country with more than 50% of the vote for the last 30 years. And only last year, in 2024, in May, did they drop below 50% and were forced to form, not even a coalition, it's a group of political parties that have no mission statement and are not doing very much. But the ANC is no longer in control. But for 30 years, if you look at every single metric, health, education, employment, the country has gone backwards. Every state-owned enterprise has been bankrupted. South African Airways used to be the best airline in Africa, bankrupt. Eskom, Electricity Supply Commission, we don't have enough electricity. We have load shedding, which means 4, 5, 6 hours a day we have no electricity. The rail network's destroyed. The ANC has destroyed our country, and it is a racist, kleptocratic, and ineptocratic government.
So let me pause this here and say that everything he said is accurate. I mean, I don't know what it is about a lot of African leaders. They just don't know how to run a country. So the ANC took a country that was running very well and run it to the ground. And if you look at a lot of African countries, it's just the same thing, copy and paste. And a lot of times they try to say, oh, it's the white people's fault, it's the colonialists and all that stuff. That's nonsense. Of course, there is a lot of external forces that is causing a lot of crisis in Africa. But you could say the same in China as well. But the Chinese, the Asians, they're South Koreans, they're able to put their brains together, put their selves together, ignore all the differences, and they work together. But in Africa, it's just a lot of the leaders are just greedy, and the people are just tribalistic. A lot of African leaders are greedy. They use tribalistic trope to put one group against each other, and they can't run a government. They're very nepotistic. Even most African people worry too much about tribes, the narcissism of small differences, so he's correct here. The ANC runs South Africa to the ground. Let's go ahead.
So let's talk about the racist part, because obviously that's still, unfortunately, the word of the day. It's a little hard, I think, from an American.
Yeah, that's how Dave Rubin makes his money. I mean, he makes his money. That's how he promotes his YouTube channel, is by creating divide, white against black and woke. Those are conversation that he dwells on. Those are very red meat issues. So that's what he wants to talk about.
In perspective, for people to realize that a government could truly govern I guess it's not that hard in some sense, but that could govern in an actual racist manner when it comes to who's getting what services and what land, et cetera, et cetera.
140 race-based laws in South Africa, all anti-white. And 8 days ago,
Also, sorry for interrupting, but what he meant by a lot of anti-race laws are laws that are supposed to take land, basically buy the land from the white owners. Remember, when the whites came to South Africa, they did not buy that land. They took the land from the black Africans by force, and they enacted laws that prevented the blacks from owning land in South Africa, which resulted in back then about 10% was white and 10% owned 80% of the land. Why? More than 80% of the black population own only 10%. So it is fair that after apartheid, there has to be laws that are passed where they would buy the land from the whites and distribute it to the poor black population. So those are what he's calling the racist laws. But after those laws were enacted, it was not very effective because it was full with truth, because it was riddled with corruption, which is why I'm saying the ANC government was very corrupt. And the land that was sold were the land that not arable land, the land that cannot be farmed on. So the white population sold lands that were not profitable, where you can't grow anything on those lands. And the policies, they tried to bog it down, and those so-called racist policies were not very effective. So when the South African government found out that they were not moving anywhere, they decided to pass a new law in 2024, which is to expropriate land from a lot of the farmers without having to compensate them, which is the breaking point, which is the reason why all this started, which is the reason for all this so-called white genocide. It's just they're trying to force the whites to give up some land to the black population, which is a socialist policies. It's a socialist policy, but you have to look back and see, okay, how did they get this land? Did they get this land by meritocracy? No, they did not. They forced it, and they enacted laws the same way, well, the same way in terms of law that they got the land. The black uh, leadership, the ANC, is using the same way without the violence being perpetrated on the white, although they're saying is genocide. There is no evidence of genocide. Somebody show me an evidence of white genocide in South Africa, but I've looked through it. I've did my research, but I haven't seen anything. So I know it's just an agenda to force the South African government, the black South African majority government, to stop this policy, which he will explain it here. Let's just go ahead and listen.
Cyril Ramaphosa, our president, signed into law, and just hear these three words: expropriation without compensation. And this is just the straw that broke the camel's back. There's been endless laws, anti-white, boiling us like a frog in a bowl. And all I can say is thank you, America, and thank you, Donald Trump, for taking notice, because we are on the edge of the socialist abyss.
So how do you guys get out of this? Obviously, there's a complex racial history there. How do you reverse some of this? I mean, that's an awful lot of laws, and
I don't think we can internally. We have to wait till the 2029 national election, and I don't think our economy will survive. It requires some external dynamic to change it. And I think Donald Trump in America taking notice and coming in swinging with a baseball bat may be that dynamic we need.
So when you saw over the...
So what he's saying is he wants to use the Israeli template, which is to bring the United States involved, get the United States involved in South Africa internal policy. But I'll tell you why this would not work. Because South Africa is not Palestine. You can't use that same strategy here. Of course, the United States can put pressure on the South African regime, but you have to look at this. South Africa is now a member of the BRICS. It's a key member of the BRICS. And the BRICS is getting powerful, and South Africa is establishing a lot of strong ties with China and Russia. So they don't need the United States as they used to in the past. So I don't know how the US will be that effective. In fact, this refugee program is a mistake. It's a mistake for the white upper class population, because they cannot claim that they have nowhere to go now, because the black South African can always tell them to go to America. And I can promise you this, those white South African refugees that you saw, none of them are farmers. The farmers are not going to come to the United States because they have a lot of wealth in South Africa. They have a lot of old money there, and they're not going anywhere. And South Africa is a beautiful country, What are they going to come here to do? Work 9 to 5? Even in America, America's farmers are complaining. The recent trade war with Trump has been a disaster for a lot of American farmers. So they're not going to abandon the cheap labor in Africa to come over here. So this is just a cry for help, and they want to save their land, and they are trying to use Elon Musk and a lot of rich elite South Africans that are in America or in the Western countries to force the Ramaphosa government to abandon this land expropriation without compensation. Of course, they want the land expropriation, but with compensation. But that hasn't been working out since 1994. So let's go ahead and continue because he has some key input that we can learn from.
Last couple of years in America, wokeness infecting our systems, and suddenly we were focused on race. And we were putting it into, it was this very people who said we were systemically racist that were putting racism into the system in a systemic way. Must have given you a little concern about the direction we're going, as much as that's now been rolled back.
See, Dave Rubin, this guy makes his money off hustling, race hustling, and woke hustling. That's his obsession. I'm not going to be the one here to defend the Democratic Party. They certainly went too far in terms of the woke culture and the woke virus. So that's true. But that is not the same thing with South Africa. There's a lot of complexity in terms of the racial dynamics of South Africa. And this is not a woke thing. This is just a equality thing. It's an equality thing. But however, the ANC government that is administrating the equality policy is very corrupt, and it is very nepotistic and are not a trusted party to administer this. So that's what's going on right now. And this guy, he's just trying to save his wealth, which is what this is all about.
Well, we've been infected in South Africa with the evil woke mind virus way more than in America. We've got it times 2, and there's no momentum in South Africa to reverse it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So it's been like a miracle that Trump got elected and he's making these decisions to reverse this wokeness because, South Africa needs a big wake-up call, and it isn't going to come internally.
What were those 3 words? It was expropriation with
expropriation without compensation.
So this is in essence they're taking farms.
Well, they
right?
can.
Yeah.
So they haven't implemented it yet. It's been signed into law.
Yeah.
And it's not just farmland, it's property. They can take the watch off my arm and they barely need to justify it. I mean, I liken it to...
So that statement is not correct. If you go through the law, the law that says, I think he's referring to the law that says that for any company from a specific sector to exist in South Africa, there has to be a 30% ownership of the Black population for a particular sector. So it's not like, oh, they're going to take your watch. Of course, government can take advantage of that and spread that to other aspects once that law has been passed. There's certainly corruptions and that I can see that happening, but that's not what the law is actually about. So he's just trying to make it seem worse than it actually is.
Having a loaded gun in the bedroom with kids running around. At some point, somebody's going to pull the trigger. And that's what this law is. And there's so many other laws in South Africa that are anti-white, race-based, and make it almost impossible for businesses to thrive. But worst of all, we're at less than 1% economic growth, less than 1%. And we have the highest unemployment in the world.
That's not sustainable.
40%. It's unsustainable. And the only way to reverse that is to have, a complete change of plan. We need a Malay. We need a Javier Malay or a Trump.
So when Trump put out that post on Truth Social about a week ago, basically saying that, in essence, that it was basically, I don't want to paraphrase it, but something to the effect of white people are being treated unfairly. I mean, that was basically the thrust of it. What do you want him to do? Okay, so it's on the map now. So what do you want to come of it?
He needs to, and I'm very grateful he's focused on us, and I want to thank all the Americans for this. He needs to force the ANC government to reverse these racial laws. Do you know that most African countries have Starlink? Elon Musk Starlink. We don't, because we have a law that every business in South Africa has to have 30% Black ownership. And Elon Musk...
So this is what I was talking about. Every business, it's not every business, it's specific sectors need to have 30% of Black ownership in it. And I disagree with this law, but this is the same thing that the Chinese, this is the same model of the Chinese. For a Western company to come into the Chinese market, you have to have a certain percentage of uh, the local Chinese people, or you have to partner with the locals for you to have a business, a thriving business in China. And the reason why the Chinese did that is so they could learn how to conduct those businesses and also take the intellectual properties, which is the reason why China is the second, if not the largest economy in the world right now. So that is the type of model that South Africa they're trying to implement, but South Africa cannot do it successfully because it's very corrupt. So in China, they hang you for being a corrupt politician, but that's not the case for South Africa. You will have people that are supposed to implement this law. They will bring their family in and their friends, and they will corrupt the entire system, which is the reason why it's not going to work. So let's go ahead and continue.
See, I'm not handing over 30% because I have to. We don't have Starlink.
It's insane.
So every piece of pressure America and Trump could put on South Africa, I think they need to do, but need to go way further than tariffs and cancelling AGOA agreements. They need to focus on sanctions and please put all the bad guys, the leaders of the ANC, EFF, which is very bad news, and MK parties, put them on the terrorist list, put them on the no travel list, ban their bank accounts, put maximum pressure on South Africa.
So this man wants, so this is so funny to hear that he admitted that he wants people to be put on a terrorist list because they want to take land that was taken from them a long time ago. It's insane. It's just amazing that he's not able to listen to what he's saying. You can't put somebody as a terrorist. You can't put somebody on a terrorist watch list that is not a terrorist, that has not done anything that could be defined as terrorism. So it's kind of strange.
Because China won't come to the rescue of the ANC. China is not going to pick a fight with America over South Africa. They'll back off. And
so see what he's trying to do. He's trying to say that's the same thing that Netanyahu used to sell the Iraq war. He was saying that if the United States come in there and defeat Saddam Hussein, it will not spread. That's the same language. I can hear that China would not retaliate if the United States come in against the ANC, which is, he is very, very wrong in that, because he's driving South Africa. They're driving South Africa away from the West and moving it to China and Russia. There's a seismic change that's going on right now. And because the US is not focusing on our interest, we're focusing on elites, people like Elon Musk, white from South Africa. What is that? How is this benefiting the United States to go against one of the richest country, resource-wise, in the world, because they want to favor Elon Musk and the white majority in South Africa? We want to secure the wealth of the white majority. That should not be the United States policy. We should be competing against China in Africa. China is basically taking all the resources in Africa. So the US have to do things that favors it, because you have all these interest groups and they have their own interest that's against the interests of the United States. And you see people like this guy that's trying to protect his wealth, and Elon Musk, using Elon Musk to pass this agenda, spreading this fake news of white genocide and bringing all this white South Africans over that will contribute nothing to the society but to be on healthcare. What are they going to do? Work 9-to-5s, be on welfare, just because they want to spread this news, a photo up of white genocide. If you notice, there's not a lot of white Africans coming over to America because they have it good over there. I mean, if you go to South Africa, especially Cape Town, it's a very beautiful country. I don't think you will live in Cape Town. I don't think you live in Cape Town to come to the United States unless you have nothing in Cape Town. So I mean, that's basically that's basically it. So please subscribe to my channel if you like my content. Thank you and have a good day.